Good morning. Going to head into our first body system that we're going to look a little bit more in depth at. So we're going to look at your integumentary system, which, like we said like I have been saying, this particular system is responsible for, or contains, rather, it's not really responsible for, but it contains your skin, hair, and nails. So we'll kind of go into that particular system. It's not a very well-known system, but still very, very important nonetheless. So, but it's a pretty easy one to understand and kind of quick, so we can get through it pretty easily. Alrighty, to start off with, this particular system, we need to talk a little bit first about membranes and types of membranes. With this one, there's different types of membranes that are found inside your body, and since we're talking about your integumentary system, which is also responsible for basically providing that outside covering from the rest of the world to your body, I thought I would insert these here. So it doesn't technically have to do with your integumentary system, but we're still going to talk about it anyway. So, don't know if we've gone over this or not, but basically what a membrane is it's just a sheet of tissue. Remember, a tissue is a bunch of cells, similar cells working together to perform a job. So in this case, it's going to be sheets of tissues that are going to provide as envelopes or coverings to other structures. So almost basically every single organ is going to have a membrane. So it's not just your skin, but since your skin's job is, like I said, to perform that covering, that's why I kind of stuck it in with this particular one. So the first type of membrane that we're going to talk about is called a mucous membrane. And what a mucous membrane is it's basically what it sounds like, although I'm not sure that you're familiar with these English terms or not, but it's going to secrete mucus, okay, to basically protect the inside of tubes from the outside environment. So that makes sense then that this particular type of membrane is going to be found on tubes or organs that are going to be exposed to that outside environment. So we're going to have mucous membranes lining the inside of your nose. They're going to have them lining your trachea and your larynx, which are basically your windpipes. Okay, so we're going to have all of these structures kind of protecting, or these particular membranes protecting those organs. So that way it's kind of just a second line of defense if something were to get inside of the body. The mucous membranes would hopefully kind of maybe catch it with that mucus that they'll secrete. So the fourth one is called the fourth one, there's four. The second one is called the synovial membrane. This is going to line the joint capsules in your body. So things like your knuckles are going to be lined with this particular type of a membrane. So it's there to provide some lubrication or some smoothness to those particular types of joints. Your next type is going to be cutaneous. Cutaneous membranes, there's only one, and it's your skin. And it's just there to cover your body, protect it. It's its only job. So the next type of membrane, or the last type rather, is going to be your serous membranes. Its job is going to be to line body cavities that aren't exposed to the outside environment. So they're there to line things like your stomach, or to line, oh, what else would it line? Maybe like the inside of your brain, or the inside of your cranial cavity. Probably be a better place. So thoracic and abdominal pelvic cavities. They're going to be the serous membranes. So, all right, on to the actual integumentary system. So your skin is the largest organ in your body. It makes up 12 to 16% of your body weight. Normally, if you're a relatively good health, that's how much it would take up. By the way, all of these facts are generally given off of your average adult male. Just FYI. So they're going to be based off of your average adult male. So it's going to be approximately 12 to 20 square feet. Obviously, the smaller you are, less skin you're going to have. It's got a couple of different functions other than to just cover your body. I mean, that's a very important function, but there's also some other jobs that it can do and does do. One of the things is it, obviously the first one is the most obvious, it does serve as that two-way barrier. So it's going to protect you from UV light from the sun, viruses, things like that, but it's also going to prevent liquids and water from leaving your body when you don't want them to. So it's kind of that other barrier from the inside to protect it that way from the inside out. It's also going to serve as a temperature regulator. I think we go more into this, if I'm not mistaken, here in the second layer. So I'm not going to speak too much on this one because we will come back to it and speak a little bit more about it. But just know that it does help with temperature regulation. So when you're too hot, your integumentary system has methods to help you cool down, and when you're too cold, or when you are cold, rather, it's got some mechanisms in place to try to help you warm up. So. It's also going to help sense your external environment. So it's going to be able to tell, it's going to have receptors in place to figure out if it's really, really hot or something's really, really cold, stuff like that. It can also, not only the hot and cold, but it can also be sensitive to pressure. So it's got the sensors embedded in it to know that you're getting a hug from someone, to feel that pressure from somebody giving you a hug. And it's also it also helps you with waste excretion. So when you sweat, you'll secrete some wastes in the form of salts. That's why your sweat tastes salty. If you've ever tasted it, because it's not because you taste it, but because it might be rolling down your face or something. I'm not saying that you lick your salt or lick your sweat. Okay. So we're going to talk now about the actual structure of your epidermis, of your skin. And the first layer, it's 3 layers, by the way. And your outermost layer is called your epidermis. So your outermost layer is called your epidermis. And this particular layer is made up of stratified squamous tissue, which basically means, like if you remember from yesterday when we were talking about the different layers of epithelial tissue, it's going to be squamous is going to be flat. Stratified means that it's going to have layers. So stratified, squamous, stratified tissue. So these particular these particular cells are staggered, so they kind of look like a brick wall, so they're not laid directly one on top of the other. They're kind of staggered out, and that's to minimize water, air loss, things like that from the inside of your body. For the most part, this particular layer is considered to be dead. It doesn't really have any real living tissue or any real living cells. It's pretty much dead. But in order to replenish this particular this particular layer, you do have to have one layer of living tissue. So in order to have one layer of living tissue, that means that something's got to be living there. So, and that layer is called the basal layer. So the basal layer of this particular layer is just one small layer of living tissue. So it's going to provide the opportunity for growth. That way you can have more epidermis. So this particular layer does need a blood supply. So that's why sometimes when you cut yourself, you don't always bleed. It's because you probably just cut that upper layer, this epidermis layer. And so that means that you probably did not get any layer that has, you probably cut that upper layer. You didn't actually get down to the basal layer. That's going to have the blood cells, or the blood vessels rather. Okay. Next one, this layer is also responsible for making keratin. Oh, hold on. Okay, sorry. So this particular layer is going to make keratin, which is a protein, and it's going to shield your skin from the sun. This layer also produces your melanocytes, or has your melanocytes. Cyte means cell. Melon refers to the melanin that it produces, the pigment that it produces, which is called melanin. And your melanin is what gives you your skin tone. So if you have a lot of melanin, you're usually darker skinned. If you don't have a lot of melanin, you're usually fairer skinned. So obviously this can be triggered by the sun, because in the summertime you get darker, and that's because the UV light will trigger these melanocytes to produce more melanin. Interesting thing about your epidermis, which you probably already knew, but it's shed and replaced every 27 days or so. So about once a month, you're going to have a brand new epidermis. So the not so great part is that most of that ends up in your bed, which is why they tell you to change your mattress every, 6 to 8 years or so, just because the amount of dead skin cells that accumulate inside your mattress is kind of staggering. So your mattress ends up getting heavier due to all of those dead skin cells, so that's the kind of gross part. But the act of taking off of shedding that outer layer, it's called exfoliation. So when you exfoliate your face, you're just encouraging that process along instead of waiting for for those skin cells to naturally fall off. You encourage them to fall off when you exfoliate. So like I said, your epidermis cells or your epidermal cells are dead. They don't have a nucleus. They're not living anymore. Once the basal layer makes more of them, but then they quickly die. They get flattened, which is attributed to the squamous shape. So they basically get deflated, and their only job is to provide that layer, that outer covering layer. And so they don't really contain any water. So they get pushed up and out as the basal layer produces more epidermal cells. But then, like I said, they quickly get dehydrated and flattened. So yeah. So I've got a picture for you. So here's a picture of the skin. I'll come back to this one after every layer. And so at the very, very top there, you can see the epidermis. It's not a very big layer, and it's actually a pretty thin layer. I don't know if it's actually the thinnest layer. I think it depends on how much fat tissue you have in your bottom layer. But you can kind of see here this darker pink, I guess, or salmon colored layer right here, this little outline, I guess. That would be your basal layer. This part right here, and then this lighter pink, and then this top pink there, that's going to be all part of your epidermis. The only other thing worth noting is that your nerves are contained in this layer, your nerve endings. So this is the layer that's really going to feel when something's hot or cold. This is the layer that's going to feel the pressure given to you when somebody gives you a hug. It does contain on the outside your pores for like your sweat, for example. This would be a sweat gland. You have this white thing. And so the sweat would be excreted out here. So anyway, so that's kind of what that top layer looks like. The next layer, the second layer down, is called the dermis. This is the middle layer of the skin. It's made up of dense connective tissue, which, if you remember, that's what we talked about when we were talking about connective tissue yesterday. So this is mostly made up of connective tissue. This is made of collagen, and it makes collagen. So kind of a it's not a protein, it's connective tissue, but it allows for the firmness, I guess, of your skin, the tightness. This definitely is the thickest layer of your skin. So this is the thickest layer of your skin. It's going to contain a lot of blood vessels. So we say that it's very vascular. Because this particular layer needs to be able to bring nourishment to the epidermis. Since the epidermis is dead, you need nourishment somewhere so that basal layer can make more epidermal cells, and that's going to be given to you from the blood vessels that are located here in the dermis. So this is where I was going to talk to you a little bit more about regulating temperature. It's in this particular layer, the dermal layer. So your blood is your core temperature, not your outside skin temperature. Meaning it's going to be that 98 point whatever degrees Fahrenheit temperature. So it's not going to be the 70 degrees, you know, that might be outside or something. So the way this one helps with temperature regulation is your blood vessels. It doesn't really say that, but we'll expand. It's talking about your blood vessels. Your blood vessels will expand and give off heat when we're too hot. So that's why your skin gets really hot when you exercise. That means that your blood vessels have kind of relaxed and have gotten bigger to encourage the heat loss from your blood. So the excess heat will be given off from your blood through the skin. So that's why your skin feels hot, like your cheeks. Then on the flip side, if you're a little cold, it will conserve heat when we're too cold. So instead of expanding your blood vessels would then contract, and to try to keep all of that heat in your body. It's not uncommon for you to shiver to kind of keep that tightness. Your dermis will also contain some sensory receptors. Sometimes some of them are located in that epidermal layer, some of them are located in the dermal layer. Your glands are all, the start of your glands, I guess I should say. The start of your glands is going to be located in this layer also. So there's two different glands that I want you to know. We kind of already talked about one, which would be your sweat glands. Okay. Before I get to that, I'm going to talk really quick. All of your skin glands are called exocrine glands, not endocrine glands. Exocrine glands just means that you secrete your product through a duct. It's not directly, basically there's a tube. It doesn't just automatically just release it. It's got to travel through, the product has to travel through a tube. That's all an exocrine gland is it's got that duct or that tube. So the tube is going to run through the dermal and the epidermal layer, but it's there. So your sweat glands is the first one. This one's job is to secrete the sweat to cool your body down. It also secretes some salts. And the other gland that I want you to know about is called your sebaceous gland. Your sebaceous gland, its job is to secrete an oily substance called sebum. And it's there to help keep your skin lubricated. basically to keep it from drying out. When you're going through that wonderful puberty stage, this particular gland can get kind of annoying. Maybe it still does, I don't really know. Because it can secrete too much sebum. And when that happens, you end up with these buildup of oil. And then that usually turns into pimples or acne. So sometimes it's not necessarily the greatest thing. So here's the picture of the whole skin again. Dermis is definitely the largest of this particular layer. You can see the sweat gland here starts. It's kind of also sometimes you could kind of argue that it's also kind of in the subcutaneous layer too, the third layer down, but it's primarily located in the dermis, and then it travels up through the epidermis before the pore is on the outside of your epidermis where all that sweat would come out. Sebaceous glands, you can always tell the difference between a sebaceous gland and a sweat gland because the sebaceous glands are going to be attached to a hair follicle. That's what this is a hair follicle. So off to the side of many hair follicles, you're gonna, or almost all of them, you're gonna have these little glands here called the sebaceous glands, and they're gonna secrete that sebum. And you can't really see it in this picture, but there's the duct is there. And its job is going to be to secrete that sebum. So, you can't really see I think it's yellow. You can't really see the yellow thing, but it's there, and it's going to just let it out here at the base here, which, like I said, if you get too much of the sebum there, you're going to get a pimple or acne or something like that. So here's a bigger picture of a sebaceous gland. So sebaceous gland is right here, coming off, comes right here at the base of the root, or kind of by the root, or the hair, I guess the root's down here rather, and then it's going to be excreted up here. And in this case, this particular, through the canal, I guess, that the hair follicle is located, when in this case too much sebum has been released, and so you can see that there's an inflammation there at the base of that hair follicle. Basically that would be a pimple. So all right, the last layer is called your subcutaneous layer. This is also known as your hypodermis layer. So sometimes you'll hear it called the subcutaneous layer, sometimes it's the hypodermis layer. It's going to be made up of connective tissue, specifically adipose or fat tissue. So this is the layer that everybody loves because it's your fat. Now, fat is, a layer of fat is a good thing. You do want some because it's a good insulator. You do need some. It's like insulation in your house. You need it so that way you don't overheat or freeze. It can also be used, oftentimes it's used to store energy. And it's going to have, it's going to have a lot of blood here. It's going to have a really good blood supply. So there's not much to write home about that one. It's just kind of down at the bottom there. You can see all of the blood vessels running through it. So it's got an arteriole and a venule, which would be blue. Arteries are generally going to be red. Veins are generally going to be blue to signify oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. Actually, deoxygenated blood doesn't look blue, even though it kind of looks blue through your veins. It's not actually blue. It's basically what dried blood looks like, so it's almost a brown. and then obviously oxygenated blood is bright red. So an arterial or a venule is going to be a thinner or a not as wide artery or vein. And then eventually an arterial or a venule will become a capillary, which is a very thin blood vessel. It's only one cell thick. And that's where the actual gas exchange happens, where oxygen is released and carbon dioxide is brought into the bloodstream. So, okay, we're gonna hit really quick the accessory organs of your skin. We call them accessory organs because they're not technically the skin, but they're attached to the skin. So we're going to talk really quick about your hair and nails, because those are the two accessory organs. So your nail is the first one. Your nail bed is what anchors your actual nail to your finger. So it's going to be the skin underneath your nail. That's the nail bed. Okay. So the nail is attached to your nail bed using connective tissue, and then your nail, which is also called your nail plate, is there to protect that nail bed. And I don't think I have anything about that, but that's what your nail plate is. That would be your nail, the nail plate. Your matrix is going to be the root of the nail. This is what's going to produce the keratin that makes your nail, or that nail plate. So it's almost like the basal layer of your epidermis. It's going to produce the keratin, which becomes your nail. So nail folds would be the next thing, and those are part of your skin, and they fold under, kind of around that nail plate, and seal up that part of your skin so no bacteria can get through there. The cuticle is kind of the outer part of that nail fold. And that's what you see there. Be kind of the outermost part of the nail fold. The nail fold would kind of go underneath on the bottom part, so it'd be technically be on the top. So your nail fold would be back here. So this part right here would be your nail fold, and then your cuticle is there on the top there, and that kind of attaches to your nail bed. And then you've got your lanula. It kind of sounds like lunar, kind of like your moon shape, crescent shape. So that's that white part, that half moon shape looking white part of your nail there. That's the front end of your matrix. Remember, your matrix is what makes that keratin, which becomes your nail. And so your lanula is basically made up of the keratin. I shouldn't say cells because it's a protein, but it's basically made of the keratin structures that haven't been flattened into the nail plate. Eventually they will be, but so that's your lanula. All right, last thing is your hair. Your hair is also made of keratin, which is that pigment, and it's going to, that protein, and it's going to contain a pigment. It's going to also contain melanin, which is going to help give you your hair pigment color. So your hair bulb is the bottommost part of your hair, and that's going to be where that's going to make more keratin, which will become your hair strand. So your hair bulb is kind of like the matrix on your nail, which is also similar to the basal layer of your epidermis. If that makes sense, put another way. So The last thing that I want you to know, because I mean, there's not too much about the hair follicle itself. It's just there. The There's a smooth muscle that's attached to the base of your hair root or that hair bulb. So there's this smooth muscle that attaches, and it's called the erector pili muscle. Basically, when that muscle contracts, it causes your hairs on your skin to stand upright, and that's when you get the sensation of goosebumps. So when this muscle contracts and gets shorter, that causes this thing to stand upright, and then you get goosebumps. So it's kind of a longer lecture there on the integumentary system, but it's actually quite an interesting system, I think. It's, like I said, it's not very well known, but it's still very interesting. So if you do have any questions, please don't hesitate to ask. And other than that, have a good day.